Welcome to this webinar. We're here today to talk about how BHS relaunched in just 7 weeks, which I think you'll all agree is incredibly quick replatforming. Today we're hearing from Kevin Murray, who's the Managing Director at Greenlight Commerce, Tony Perks, who's former Group CIO and CTO at BHS International, and Paul Bidder, who's Sales Director for EMEA North for SAP HYBRIS, who are going to talk us through how they managed to pull off for this marvellous feat. For our lovely audience, the webinar is being recorded, a copy of which will be available probably early next week. And we'll be running a couple of polls for you to express your views during the webinar. So vote when that comes up, and we shall discuss how you all feel once that's done. If you want to ask questions, we shall be putting those to the panelists at the end, but type them in and we'll keep hold of them and have a look at them and read out the best ones at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Tony, who is the former CIO and CTO at BHS International, who's going to talk us through how they did it. It's quite extraordinary. So Tony, over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us. So we're going to talk through how we got to go back online in a record time that everyone told us was impossible. You will probably all have seen the press during the demise of BHS and how the original BHS organization went into administration. I at the time was the CIO for BHS when we went into administration and then moved on to the international business. The international business came about because the Almana group, Qatari group, bought the rights to BHS.com, the rights to go online. And that happened about the middle of June, and it honestly was a last-minute acquisition for them. They were already buying the international trading business from BHS, and they decided to acquire the rights to online in the UK. They bought the rights to online, and at that point were relatively unsure about what they were going to do with it. They had a short period of time to decide what to do. Their options really were just to park it so that it didn't get used by anyone else, to sublicense that to someone else and basically take a cut of whatever came from it, or to trade it themselves. And they very quickly decided that they would trade it themselves. And there were a number of reasons for that. One of the two of the biggest ones really were that we had as BHS and BHS Online, we had a very loyal customer base, and we knew that we could re-engage with them, but we really had to do that quite quickly. There was as you'll probably recall, there was a huge amount of public sentiment in favour of BHS post going into administration. And without giving too many secrets away, it became quite a peak period for us. So we really wanted to be able to capitalise on some of that emotion that was in the UK, and to get back into the hearts and minds of those people that we were currently trading with, who we were engaged with and able to engage with. So there was then a conversation about, well, how quickly could we do that so that we don't lose that momentum? And at that point, we had to decide, well, how long can we go quiet for? We knew it couldn't be 12 months. We knew that was too long. We weren't sure how quickly we could do it. And then at some point, someone said, well, let's put a stake in the ground, and that stake in the ground is 3 months. And to make sure that we are back online trading, and not just trading, but trading and with a stable platform by the time we get to peak. So that gave us a very short timeline to try and address, and that's really what this conversation is about. I know just while we're going through this, I think a poll is going to appear on your screens, which is probably going to ask a question about how long do you think a standard e-commerce project would take?
It is indeed. There's the poll. So attendees, if you vote now, we'll get some idea of what you all think about the length of replatforming projects. I know what I think is going to come out as the top answer, but it's been interesting to see what you guys see. So just leave the poll for a couple more seconds. I think everyone's voted. We're just at the end now. Right, I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. And there we go. And I'll share the results. And yes, there we are. That's what the audience are thinking. And 9 to 12 months seems to be the most common conception. Excellent. I shall hide the results. And back to you, Tony.
Thank you, Paul. So the result of that actually is probably not much different to what we thought originally when we first started talking about this. So as you can imagine, being given an objective by new ownership that just was not acceptable was a bit of a challenge. So we knew we wanted to go live quickly, but honestly, we weren't really sure how we were going to go about that. We didn't have capability nor ability in-house to do it ourselves. There was no IT function. The old BHS was served by an outsourced IT function, and that was no longer available. So we had to look at a different way of being able to achieve what we needed to do. That being put together an ecosystem, if you like, of partners to enable us to both trade and trade online. So that's exactly what we did. There was already a stake in the ground, and the stake in the ground was that we were going to use SAP ERP for our back end. So we'd almost poured concrete around that, really, and that was not up for debate. So that led us towards HYBRIS, quite obviously, as a forerunner for the web environment. So that's really how we got to putting together this what we'll call this partner ecosystem that you can see on the slide now. And that covered our warehouse management, our supply chain, our payments, our customer service, which was our Sensos in the bottom right-hand corner. In-cloud solutions were our other key partner, working along with Greenlight, who deployed the SAP by design backend for us. And then Greenlight to drive the web and the HYBRIS piece, and drive the integration back to all of those other partners to make this work successfully. Even down to because we didn't have the resource and capability in-house, we outsourced some of our UAT and testing. It was the only way that we could do this in time, and that's where Zunu helped us. So there was some initial key high-level requirements that we knew we had to meet. The platform had to be what we would, in simple English, call a modern platform. It had to be fully responsive. We needed to be able to personalize it to a degree, and we needed to be sure that we had some good, clean, modern navigation. As well as going back online, this was an opportunity for us to go back online with a very credible, longer-term customer offering. And our hope was that we would be able to go back online with something that was better from the user experience than we had previously. The other thing that was very important to us, we had to make sure that what we did now, we didn't have to undo and redo in the future. So while we had to do something that was the right size for the business going back on stream, and effectively it was a business that was thinking of itself as a startup, but we weren't really a startup. But we had to have startup mentality in order to be able to move as quickly as we needed to. And note, I'm trying not to use the word agile because I think it's overused in these circumstances. But in reality, we did deploy a very agile approach to what we were doing in the true sense of the word. So partly because we'd already got by design being configured and being built, we landed on the HYBRIS option, and at that point we approached HYBRIS through contacts of mine, and then HYBRIS introduced us to the partner that we ended up deploying with. And I think at that point it's probably appropriate I hand over to Paul Bidder from SAP HYBRIS.
Thanks, Tony. So yeah, you know, as Tony's already said, when he approached HYBRIS, he knew what he wanted, but more importantly, he knew what he didn't want. You know, because he won't mind me saying this, but Tony's a bit of a veteran in the IT world. He's been around the block enough times to know what he doesn't want as well. And what he didn't want was, you know, an obsolete system, you know, or one that's going to be hard to manage. And so for Tony and BHS, this was a chance for them to have carte blanche. Right? This was a chance, as he said, to choose a system that was not just good enough for today, but one that's going to be fit for purpose in 10 years' time and also support the business growth. But with HYBRIS, we had to demonstrate that. You know, Tony wasn't just going to, you know, take our word for it. We had to demonstrate that we had the out-the-box functionality available, and for the business to use straight away as well, right? So things like the PIM, the WCMS, the promotions, the responsiveness with mobile, you know, and a list of other things as well that were available for the team to use straight away. But we also had to show how simple the HYBRIS system was to use as well, you know, from the business tooling and a merchandising point of view, right, to do the business as usual tasks. Because the other thing you need to consider on this as well is that in the back office, there are only 2 or 3 people within BHS that were going to be running this site and merchandising it. So it had to be super simple. But if you put functionality aside, absolutely the key issue for Tony was rapid deployment. And I do remember quite distinctly that the pointed question that Tony put straight to me, looked me in the eyes and said, Paul, can SAP HYBRIS deliver this site in 7 weeks? You know, absolutely, right? That was my response. Absolutely, we can, Tony. And I was super, super confident in being able to do that. Not just from the HYBRIS side of things, but also from the Greenlight side with their experience, you know. But also, I wanted to give Tony even more reason to trust me. He trusted the answer, but I wanted more. And on that way, what we did was I wanted SAP HYBRIS to go shoulder to shoulder with Greenlight and with BHS to put our own skin in the game, right? And by doing that, we embedded our own expert services in the project as well. But HYBRIS is not just about the single channel, right? It's not just about e-commerce, and nor was the BHS vision, right? There's a future, and we don't know what it looks like yet, but it couldn't be restricted. So yes, we needed to get the site up and running quickly, but we also needed to make sure we didn't restrict the future scope for BHS moving forwards, and that was super important to us, right? So not only did they have a B2C platform, but they also had a B2B platform in the same solution. And what does that mean? Well, that means that they can handle, you know, from day one, the consumer side of business, you know, the consumer side. But also you've got to realize here as well, there was a franchise business sitting behind the BHS acquisition. And moving forwards, they now have the opportunity to, within the same platform, to run the wholesale side of business, again, through the same solution, which means that they've got much better TCO. And also, again, it comes back to this ease of running the day-to-day business, right, without having to expand the team in a stupid way, too big. But the key for me was actually supporting the future vision, is the fact that we put both the customer and the product data at the center of everything we're doing. And that means, quite simply, this isn't just a commerce platform, right? This is a customer engagement platform. And that means that we're able to let BHS know their customers and give them that contextual, you know, experience as we move through the relationship with that customer. And that's all available for BHS to utilize, right, as it moves forward and resurrects the brand and continues to do so. And it also means that the customer can transact with BHS whenever and wherever they choose to do so, right, and interact with them. And that is the ethos on which HYBRIS is also built on. But the fastest way for BHS to actually get live was on our cloud commerce platform. Right? We were able to project manage the infrastructure, to get the environments deployed ourselves, and also not just in a short period of time, but also know that those environments were built and configured for the HYBRIS optimized way. Right? And like I said, this was also in hand with Greenlight. So they've got super experience, great experience in HYBRIS as well. So as a team effort, again, it just reinforced the fact that we had true belief in being able to get this live as quickly as we did. But the key thing is not only did the Commerce Cloud allow for the rapid deployments, there are also some other key benefits that BHS were able to utilize along the way as well as nice side effects. So, like I said, they had the industry-leading B2B and B2C platform in one solution. Unlike on SaaS platforms, they are able to have the ability moving forward to differentiate from their customers, from their competitors, and put innovation in front of the customers, and have that innovation and differentiate, which is I think, super critical to retailers moving forwards nowadays. But also they had a system that was super scalable, right? So not long after the site launched, obviously we then went into Black Friday. There was no degradation on the site, there was no issues, and the point was the client could relax knowing that everything was in place to make sure there was no failure. But for me, the biggest benefit for BHS, and this kind of comes back as well to the number of people running the site, was the fact that we take care at SAP HYBRIS of the infrastructure and the support and the hosted solution and all of the underlying patches and things like that, right? Which means that BHS can concentrate on what they do best, right? And that is running their business. That is merchandising the site. That is finding more products to put on the site. And more importantly, pushing the brand to bring it back, to life, so they could concentrate on that. But the final key for me, the final key element of making the deployment as fast as it was and delivering in that 7 weeks was the fact that HYBRIS has built the concept of the accelerators. We have them for B2B, for B2C, for telco, for travel, for retail. And these accelerators, effectively make life easy. They make life easy for customers, they make life easy for integrators, because out of the box, there's pre-configured and tested core accelerator, and you're able to add your branding. You don't need to look like everyone else. You can change that branding however you want, but you can add your branding, you can add your products and your content to the site. You can hook up your integration, or if you want, you can just run with flat files from day one. You have that choice. You choose your PSP and off you go live. And it really is that simple as you need it to be as well, which is what allowed us and I'm sure Tony will go into it later on, but it's allowed us to have that MVP model. That gave us 3 key things that happened within the project. It reduced the risk of the project. It reduced the cost of the build, which was obviously important for a business coming back from the grave. And most importantly, it allowed that ability to get back to market faster. Now, Kevin, I'm sure you're probably going to expand further in here, so I'm going to let you do that.
Thanks, Paul. So I still remember the phone call that I got when I heard the brief of the project, when the excitement kind of went about obviously being involved, potentially bringing a brand back to life, which has been in the news for so much, was pretty much dawning on the realization of asking myself and the team the question of how are we going to do this? We have experience, as Paul has kindly said, and we've worked with a number of brands, retailers and businesses to be able to bring their digital experiences and commerce transactional experiences to life. And so in some ways, we kind of nearly had a playbook. I like to think we did have a plan, albeit one that had to be augmented slightly from what we had usually done with brands. And as the kind of poll said earlier on, most people would expect a launch to go within 9 to 12 months. And we just didn't have that luxury. But for us, it was very much, my response back to Paul and to the BHS board at the time was, if you want to achieve something like this, you don't need a supplier, you need a partner, because we all have to work together to make this happen, which means some days are going to be hard, but we're all going to sit there and we feel the pain together, but ultimately we feel the success together. And I think that's the only way these kind of things can work. So we had a plan. Part of that plan was probably built on I suppose years of work that we have done previously in the past in HYBRIS and the team we've gathered here together in Greenlight. We have a concept called Highlight, which allows us to do rapid deployments of HYBRIS solutions where maybe there's some third-party integrations or key features that are needed for every single website. We have, as I said, pre-integrations and partners, and also everything from data models to ultimately developed works that allows us to accelerate and build upon what's already there. And the flexibility that HYBRIS gives, we have taking elements that, as I said, we know we need to deliver quickly. So I said we have our concept. We have a number of things that we need to deliver using, if you like, the foundations of what SAP HYBRIS provided, and also with a Greenlight's experience in the background. And from that, we move towards building a solution architecture. I think, Tony, if you want to just talk in here briefly on this, we think that, you know, this is, while it's something we kind of worked on together, we pretty much had I think a vision early before we started the build of what we think this might look like based on the ecosystem you had already presented.
Yeah, we did, and I don't want to overplay this nor underplay the MVP actually. And I think Paul spoke quite quickly there about and mentioned the minimum viable product. We did know what we wanted to do, but it came back to that very high level blocky diagram that we showed a few minutes ago. And that was Tony's version of solution architecture. Well, clearly that wasn't going to deliver what we needed to in terms of the real data transfers and the real interface and integrations that we needed to build. So at that point, there was quite a heavy reliance upon the guys at Greenlight and, you know, their existing experience of having done this before, working in conjunction with our ERP partner. But I just want to take a moment just to comment on the MVP piece, if I may, because there was a lot of, I would say, speculation, or speculation is probably the right word, probably a little bit of lack of confidence in what MVP really meant, because a number of people who were part of the project have been through MVP type builds of solutions in the past, and generally are quite cynical about MVP because they believe that the M becomes the most significant part of that three-letter acronym to the solution provider, because the solution provider wants to get away with delivering as little as possible, i.e. the minimum of the minimum viable product. I'm going to go against that a little bit, because to us the MVP was really, really important, and it was the basis on which we actually got this across the line, because there was a real understanding in the team that minimum viable were the two things that together were important. Minimum because we needed to do it very quickly, so we obviously needed to do as little as possible so that we could be ready to launch and be stable. But it had to be viable. If it wasn't viable, there was no point in us being there. So MVP to us became the thing by which we were living and breathing. And I think the accelerators that Paul referred to, and I apologize if I sound a bit like a HYBRIS salesman at this point, but the accelerators did give us that jump start. And I was very nervous at the beginning about taking an accelerator, so-called, out of the box, because I believe things never really work out of the box. We could actually have traded it out of the box, but it would have looked like Tony's website as opposed to being BHS. But what it did give us the ability to do was to more than just skin it. It became the BHS site using our navigation, using our mega nav, using our brand, using our look and feel, and it very much delivered the functionality that our online trading team needed to see. And it did it in much more than being just barely viable, I think, is the important point. And this architecture that sits behind it was the architecture that enabled the entire solution to be good as an end-to-end solution. That was really important to us.
So obviously we knew the solution scope at a high level, and what we had to do is take what kind of normal project processes, when we spoke earlier about, you know, the 6 to 9 month engagement, what do they usually look like. With every project we have, typically we'll have these 4 phases on a normal project that can last up to 6 or 9 months beyond. Where we have to do a design and discovery to really understand the requirements. We then run into a build of some sort. We do a test and a UAT and then a launch, which numerous activities involved in that are usually consulting, some form of iterative development, execution, test planning, system integration, architectural, a number of things that we have to do, and usually in a long project. But actually for BHS, we had to do something a little bit different and take some of those elements too, but very much drive what we could achieve in that short space of time, using, if you like, our knowledge, but also a partnership approach that really questioned what the minimal viable products actually would be. So for us, it was about taking the HYBRIS Accelerator and theming it to make a fresh brand view and vision from the new owners, and make the look and feel attractive for the new demographic the team we're starting to go after. To look at providing the right product range for day one, and also having the ability to be able to make payments and have I suppose a frictionless checkout from day one. Be able to provide some basic My Account functionality, but also to be able to have some integration to assist with the business processes and if you like, order fulfillment and delivery. And hence an integration by SAP by design was also required, because it was one thing to be able to deliver in inverted commas, a website. Actually, we needed to deliver a digital engagement platform to ensure anything that was bought could actually be delivered. So some of the key milestones, if we look at from this engagement, this project, was, we stepped back a little bit over the months we worked on the project. As Tony mentioned earlier, Almana acquired BHS International, and in the middle of July we engaged with all the teams together, so HYBRIS and ourselves, to work with BHS to understand what was required. We did a board presentation, I think within 4 days of understanding the brief, to really approach how we think we were going to do this. And very soon after, we had a contract signed, and actually the old BHS site was removed as part of the acquisition through Almana from the previous owners.
And actually that was quite a key milestone for us, because as soon as the old BHS site went down, we were then conscious we were no longer in the day-to-day psyche of people. So that really set the start of the very, very critical timescale for us, because we had to be back on air to make sure that we could leverage that some of that emotion and those people who were buying from us previously. And as we all know, it's all quite fickle, and they could have gone off somewhere else. So that was a very key moment for us when the old BHS site actually went off the air.
And I think part of also the work we did as part of our digital marketing arm was to ensure to attempt to capture as much of SEO and digital marketing that we could to try and move forward on the new site. And then that was a way of trying to preserve some of that equity that was available prior and while the site was offline. Very soon we started the consulting, which lasted a week, less than a week in fact, and we started the build straight away soon after that. Interestingly, actually, at the end of August, to Tony's point as well, the last BHS store closed. And again, this idea of BHS disappearing from the psyche of the customer became absolutely real, because the brand had, from a physical perspective, had disappeared from the high street. We started UAT and business set up from a digital perspective in terms of loading and enriching the products and doing our operational acceptance testing in the middle of September, to go for our launch on the 29th. So I think the launch day we'll probably speak about a little bit later, but in terms of a high level timescales, that's what the kind of key milestones of that project look like, and which is quite a lot in such a short space of time. However, when we went live, that just wasn't the end of the journey, that was only the start. So we have continuous delivery, and while we had an MVP to deliver for day one, we work in a continuous cycle. So we have a 4-week release cycle where we're delivering constant updates to the site. We run various kind of epic review meetings with the team, and we have what we like to also call a weekly challenge sprint meeting, where we engage and speak to BHS and really question, okay, what features are coming on the site? We think they're going to provide good business value based on the costs and efforts of actually trying to implement this in terms of time. Are the team ready? Because going back to the MVP and the HYBRIS system, we could deliver quite a lot of functionality from day one, but the team just need to make sure they were ready with their strategy to understand how do they want to use that best for their trading. So some features, just before we turn them on, we just make sure everything's ready and the business is ready to be able to start using those features. And other things from those who are familiar with the Agile methodology is using show and tells and retrospectives to ensure we're continually feeding back, and it is one team that we're working together, because this has to be a partnership for it to be successful. I think I'm just going to go over to Paul and just ask around another poll to run. I think we want to maybe ask a question for those who are online about MVP, just to get a good understanding from those who are who have maybe who understood the term or have seen it maybe used before.
And yep, there's your next poll about MVP and your understanding of it. So vote now. Looking forward to some interesting results here. Just give the poll a couple more seconds to run. Nearly there. Right, I think I shall run the poll down in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And there you have your results. 57% there have a good understanding and have used it before. Is that does that come as a surprise to you, panelists?
So in some ways for me it does, because I think, and something I'll get on into a second, is that how strict people are about their MVP and what it means for them within that business. I think it actually is what the differentiator is. And as Tony mentioned earlier, in BHS and obviously the situation they were in meant they could maybe be a little bit more ruthless about what they needed to do to get to market and the timescales we had. That's something I'll probably go on a little bit later. Tony, have you got a comment on this?
No, I suspect it also reflects the audience we have as well, actually, who are interested in how we got here so quickly. So actually, I'm perhaps not quite so surprised that such a large proportion of people certainly understand the term MVP. I'd be more just as interested in what's their view on how well it's usually used, because that was the challenge that we went through, and it was really sticking to the real definition of it.
And I think this is maybe come back to my point there. You know, this, I think this Dilbert kind of cartoon, you know, maybe illustrates this a little bit, is that, you know, some people's minimum viable product may actually not be minimal, where everybody adds their 2 cents into this huge backlog and huge list, where people are within a business are either challenged about not being able to take a perceived step backwards, or that something that's really thought as a minimal viable product means that they can't go live without having a certain feature on the site. And I think for us, it's about working closely with businesses to understand the impacts of these things. There's no right or wrong in terms of what a minimum viable product is for a business. It's about understanding the list of actions and the consequences of the choice they make in terms of whether they have a feature on the site. But ultimately, it was about measuring it to make sure that if there is a feature there, and if they're going to continue to evolve that feature, is it generating the revenue or the customer engagement, or delivering the operational enhancements it should do, based on the KPIs for that feature, prior to agreeing with those prior to delivering it. So, and I think, Tony, I suppose one of the elements you had mentioned before and you spoke about earlier is you know, again, this your minimal viable product, and how viable it was maybe in terms of the amount of features that the team got compared to maybe the previous site.
Yeah, and I think I preempted this conversation. I preempted this earlier by speaking out earlier. But my job in this, in amongst the BHS team, was really to get people to have some confidence that we could go down the minimum viable product route without the emphasis on minimum. And I think that's what we did. There was also a stark realization that we had no choice, actually. So I'm not kidding myself that we were in a rather unique situation from a number of perspectives. One unique situation was that I had the absolute luxury of starting to build a business platform from a blank sheet of paper, and that's rare, and probably the only time in my career I've ever managed to do it. And the other unique thing for us was we really had no choice. So the only way we were going to meet the owner's objective of being back online in time for the peak period and then into Christmas was to do it this way. And yeah, we could have taken longer. You know, we could have taken longer, and we could have thrown more requirements into the pot, and we could have burned a few more user stories, and we could have delivered a bit more functionality. We don't know the answer to this question, but would we really have collected any more revenue? Would we have sold anything new that we didn't sell during that period of time? It's probably that we wouldn't have, but we would have missed a major opportunity to be able to go back to those people that thought very highly of BHS and still wanted to buy from BHS. So for us, it was definitely the right thing to have done and proved to be successful. And that really, I guess, takes us on to what happened at the launch. So we got to the 29th of September, and as this is to tell you about what really happened, I'll be honest and tell you that in the 24 hours running up to 5 a.m. on 29th of September, there were what I would describe as a couple of hairy moments, but we got through them. There were some very final things happening with the integration during the last 24 hours. We had teams in 2 locations, in the BHS premises and in the Greenlight premises. We used nothing more than Skype to join us together. We kept an open link on Skype, and we kept a virtual team talking from both ends of that Skype connection. We were somewhat fortunate in that we were physically located quite close. So then before the actual launch, we did all merge into the BHS building, other than 1 or 2 people left back at Greenlight. And we went live at 5 a.m. and we started taking orders. And I can honestly say that we didn't have a problem. The site traded well. It did everything we expected it to do. Our trading teams were happy with what they were seeing. The performance was good. The experience was good. And we suddenly had a fully responsive site that now worked properly on tablets and phones that we didn't have in the old world, which was actually quite a big plus, because a large proportion of our customer base actually prefer to conclude their purchase on a mobile device as opposed to at the desktop. We got to Black Friday as we expected to. We still pushed Black Friday as we would have done in the old world, and as everyone would expect, Black Friday was by far our biggest day. Again, we had insurance policies in place in the infrastructure in case the infrastructure didn't cope with demand. We didn't need to use those insurance policies, that being technology that we put in front of the website. We didn't need to do that. The hosted HYBRIS infrastructure worked very well.
I think the key for launch and post-launch, as I mentioned earlier on, was we've kind of created a foundation for the business to be able to grow based on from where they were, and ultimately to be in control of their own destiny of where they want to go to. I cannot really, I suppose, go into too much detail about what the vision is and what's going to go forward from a detailed functional perspective of BHS, other than we're working very closely with them to evolve what's already been put there. So, the areas such as improved merchandising support and product enrichment workflows are areas which we have worked on already since launch, but also are continuing to evolve and again deliver to support the business. Areas of promotions, and Paul had mentioned earlier, promotions are a very good example of that. We actually delivered key functionality for promotions for day one, but the business needs to be ready to enable promotions to be able to merchandise them and understand how they want to go to market with those particular promotions. So we've started to enable those rather than having to do any development to support the business and the business vision. And things such as being able to extend the range, and also really focus on again supporting the trading team and what they want to focus on from a customer purchasing perspective, and the set of product ranges they feel a new BHS is going to provide. I think the last two elements is to supporting a targeted approach to customer acquisition. So BHS is obviously using this as an opportunity to be able to look at their demographic and to look at what customers they want to work with. And as Tony mentioned earlier, the sentiment and the positivity of when this new site went live was I think took all of us a little bit by surprise, because of some of the negativity that was in the marketplace for some of the other things happening in the news. But it seems to be there still is a lot of love for the brand, and I think we're providing the tooling and the support to that business to be able to capitalize on that. I think that last point we have here is an improved customer experience. You never stop improving customer experience. It's never done, and so we're always continually looking for ways to improve the engagement, the experience, and ultimately the conversion rate optimization, which is another part of the work that we continue to do with the BHS team. With that said, looking at time, I think we're at question time now. So I think Paul is going to hand back to you, and we can maybe look at facilitating a few questions if anybody wants to ask them.
Excellent. Yes, we've had some in. I'll keep monitoring the questions box if others come in, but we'll make a start with the ones that we already have in. We've had various versions of this same question, actually. Were there any unexpected issues, and how did you deal with them? Or what went wrong and what did you do about it?
Good one. So I think from my perspective, I always going to describe these as two different sets, really. We have the known unknowns, which are, there's a few things that we have a realm and idea that something may go wrong, and we usually have a toolkit that's able to address them, albeit on project to project. We don't really know exactly what they're going to be, but we have an idea. And then we have the unknown unknowns, which are things that just come out of left field that no one would ever really think could happen. And from our perspective, I don't think we had many of the unknown unknowns, things that we would usually expect to have in projects that could be challenging. We tended to head off at the pass early. So whether it was gathering data or doing integrations or testing or making sure the fraud rules were set up properly online or doing cross-browser testing, things that we knew would throw up a few challenges, we tried to do as early and as quickly as possible. But for actually things that came out of left field completely, I'm not so sure there were many things. Tony, a few thoughts?
Yeah, I'll go back to that diagram of our partner ecosystem. Although I keep harping on about the fact that we stuck to the term MVP and we were honest to the minimum viable product. Integrating those moving parts from that partner ecosystem was a fairly aggressive objective. But we didn't have a lot of choice if we wanted to do it properly. The truth is we had a couple of issues that came up with those integrations because we were using as much standard integration technology and capability between by design and HYBRIS as we could. We were then quite reliant upon our third parties to be as aggressive as we were in trying to reach that objective. So one of the challenges for me, particularly in that area, was to try and manage those third parties to be as bullish about delivering on this objective as we were. And while they were all very technically capable, of course we weren't the only game in town that they were talking to. So we were interfering with their timelines, their objectives, and their timescales. So that took some careful management. And there was a couple of things we had to do in terms of data interchange that caused us a few problems. And one of the scary thing I referred to actually was about one of the integrations that happened during the very last few days. But we got through it. And Kevin also referred to the things we had to deal with. That we had to have a very strong focus on getting data ready in time. So the guys could get the site ready, they could get the structures ready, but they needed content. And we had a relatively small team in the back office, both across our merchandising team and our trading team and our back office team at BHS, pulling data together. So we were on the hook the whole time for providing content, and we couldn't afford to let that slip. So that became a little bit hairy at times as well.
Great, lovely. Here's another one from the audience. Which online merchandising tool does BHS use? Does it come with HYBRIS or is it a plugin?
So I suppose we can't go too much into some of the detail around any of the external tools that use at the moment, because some of those parties, if we did mention them, we can't really agree to talk about them. At the moment, although they heavily use the HYBRIS platform itself and using the search, the HYBRIS commerce search extensively to be able to bury and boost the listing pages and the PLPs. So that was primarily the main driver for the team. And there are a couple of other merchandising tools that are there, but they're not as extensively used as maybe the core HYBRIS features and functionality.
And some of that actually came back to the MVP approach again. I know it sounds like a broken record, but all the time it was, the answer to the question needs to be HYBRIS. Why can't HYBRIS do it if we're going to achieve this MVP delivery? And that kind of drove us a little bit.
Okay, lovely. Here's another one, which I suspect has probably got a very short answer. Do you think you could have launched in 7 weeks if you didn't outsource?
No.
There you go. I thought that would be the answer.
Absolutely
anyone
not
want to
possible.
add to that at all?
We didn't have the technical ability or resources in-house to do that. The only way we could do it was by relying on external party to drive us to a degree. We relied very heavily on our partner, Greenlight specifically, and also our by design partner, to be fair to them, to give them some credit. We drove two project plans in parallel, and the only way we could do that was by relying on our external partners who we considered to be, you know, the experts and domain experts that we'd engage with to tell us what to do.
Great. Right. Hopefully this isn't littered with typos. How long to get SAP's BB design up and running where majority of the complexity is housed? Not sure what that's
yeah, so if you talk, it's a question about SAP by design. It's probably not what this webinar is about, but it was done in parallel. Right. And I'm very happy if anyone wants my details afterwards to have a conversation about what we did with by design. I'm very happy to engage with that. But effectively, we did the by design piece of work in parallel, and the by design team really teamed up with our HYBRIS team because it became a single project. I think the point to make was that on the day we went live, orders were being sent to by design, so it was up and running and it was engaged and it was being used. So the full vision of what the phase one of the solution would look like all happened on the 29th of September. It did.
And that's kind of where I was saying earlier on about where the expert services came in. You know, for us it was important to reduce risk for BHS, and you know, the key area for the expert service to work on was working with the business by design team as well, to make sure that went through as smoothly as possible.
Great, lovely. Right, here's the next one. How big was the development team? Did you have multiple Scrum teams?
So actually, interestingly, from a HYBRIS delivery perspective, we didn't. We had a single Scrum team, and again, people who maybe aren't kind of are thinking how we managed to achieve so much in using only a single Scrum team. And again, a Scrum team of which was made up of, at the time, there was 7 developers, an architect, 3 testers, and a project delivery lead, and a BA. And that was on our side, and then we had a product owner on the BHS side with a customer experience person who was also in the team. But in terms of actual delivery, our approach was that we felt there was no point in going too big and having too many people on the team, because actually that becomes an overhead itself, and you know, to manage it. For us, it was about having experts, which we have, and you know, one person who was an expert in their field is better than maybe having 3 or 4 juniors who are maybe new to HYBRIS and SAP. So we felt that actually having a smaller team of experts was better than having very large multiple swathes of delivery personnel, because our experience has shown that sometimes that doesn't work. And actually, we felt that we were comfortable able to achieve the MVP required in the timescales that we had to deliver the projects, and which we did successfully.
Great. Anyone want to add anything to that?
No, I think Kevin's just explained that very clearly.
Excellent. Yeah, go on.
So we didn't have a lot to offer to the development team from our side. It really was just the one UX person.
All right, excellent. Next question: how is BHS product and pricing information maintained? Is there an RFC or a GATP configuration?
And well, I suppose in terms of the overall architecture, all the pricing information and the if you like, the unique initial creation of a product sits within the business by design ERP. But as the life cycle of the product moves on, the enrichment of that product happens in the PCM within HYBRIS, and also the pricing information is also passed through from the ERP or from business by design into HYBRIS. Any promotional activity that occurs actually also occurs within HYBRIS, from any of the kind of WASNA or any of the promotional pricing or promotional campaigns that are run on the site. So which is a typical architecture where the mastering of the pricing occurs within the ERP, and that's pushed through to the commerce platform to be able to manage the promotional elements to it. And when it comes to then the product creation, that typically also sits in the ERP, but the actual enrichment of that product data all happens within the PCM of in this case, obviously the HYBRIS PCM.
Great. Here's a good one. What made you go with HYBRIS over some of the, and this is their words, not mine, more well-known platforms such as Magento?
I think I may have touched on that earlier. We had, for a number of reasons, we had already poured some concrete foundations around the fact we were going to deploy SAP by Design as the ERP and accounting system. So that, I won't say it narrowed the focus, but it made us more focused on having something that would integrate very easily, very quickly with by Design, and it needed to be something that we knew we could put confidence in. The SAP and SAP HYBRIS story was very convincing. Paul referred earlier to a conversation we had when I looked him in the eye and said, "Are you sure you can really do this?" And that's really what took us down the HYBRIS route. You know, I'd had experience of working with other platforms previously. I knew what was involved, so I knew what we could be letting ourselves in for. So we had to take the route of least resistance, and we truly believe that this was the route of least resistance. And I think the end result probably proved us right.
Great. We've got quite a lot of questions actually, so I shall move on swiftly. As to next steps, what is the most important factor that needs to be addressed?
Oh, I'm not sure the context of that. So it's the most important as the next steps.
I think
if I assume
next, I guess is what the questioner means.
Yeah, I suppose so. So I think what I suppose that really comes down to, you know, as we're working with BHS, and I have to be careful, but I can't give away too many of their trade secrets, but obviously they have a plan as to how they want to increase and really build on this if you like, a new if it's moving something from a blank sheet of paper where they're restricted in the past of what they were able to do to what they can go forward with now, along with the new owner's vision. So for us to be able to provide them the ability to be able to support their approach to engaging with customers, not only old but new, providing them products that they can easily find, products that they want and have aspirations for, and be able to buy them quite easily, and being able to offer them, as with any, you know, customer. And I'm reticent to use this as a promise, not using the word omni-channel for 2017. So I've broken my my own promise now halfway through the year, but customers now want to be able to buy anywhere, anytime, easily and effectively. And actually, that's one of the key fundamentals of the SAP HYBRIS platform, is to be able to enable that, and not to have to enable it all in day one, as we've already shown, but to enable the elements to them over time, knowing that the platform is going to be able to support your growth. And I think that we're working closely with BHS to start to enable those features, or to align with their business and trading plans and aspirations over the next 12 to 18 months.
Great stuff. Here's a good one. How much do you think that you settle for using out-of-the-box functionality versus bespoke development features? And the questioner has a caveat. I asked because our last platform choice promised a lot out of the box, but delivered a lot less than we expected.
Well, I'll answer that, and I'll let Kevin add a bit more to it probably. We took an awful lot out of the box. As I said, we could really have traded it by skinning it. That really wasn't where we wanted to be. So the structure and what I would describe as the core mechanics of the site, we definitely took out of the box. We added our own brand, obviously, and some work went into the style of the navigation. The bit where we added some, I don't want to call it bespoke or customization, but I suppose it really was around integration. And that was because we integrated not just with another SAP product, we integrated with a couple of other third parties as well, one being customer service, and also through to our warehouse and logistics function. But we really did take, I would say, it's very difficult to say, but I would say perhaps 70 to 80% of what we did was in some form or another out of the box. Now there's devil in the detail of the answer to that, but we didn't go into an 80% customization by any means. Again, proven by the fact that we were able to deliver this in a short period of time. I think that sort of supports the answer, really.
I mean, I'll try and be brief on this one. I think from my perspective, you know, there's customization and there's extension. And obviously we're able to extend the platform to ensure that we can kind of continue on the path of which, you know, why businesses invest in an e-commerce and customer engagement platform is to enable themselves to take on future versions easily and effectively. There was no real core customization, if you like. We were just enabling and extending areas which we needed to, which every project is expected to do, and actually the framework makes it easy to do as part of the implementation. Going back to, I suppose, the person who asked the question and their point, it all, I suppose, depends on how each business thinks how unique its online offering is, and as to whether they think they truly need to customize or extend versus just using what's out of the box. From a HYBRIS SAP perspective, you can customize and extend anything. The question as a business in Greenlight we always ask a customer is, just because you can do it, should you do it? Should you not look at evaluating your business processes to maybe align better with the technology and the solution to make sure you get the ROI of the system you're after implementing? Otherwise, you might as well do a homegrown build, and in that case, you're looking at building development teams. And from our perspective, you know, don't be developers, be retailers, or be whatever business you're in to be, not a technology company. And I suppose it's if the business really feels that it has very unique requirements where it has to go around and change it has to do heavily customization, then I suppose it's that, you know, there's lots of businesses think they're unique. A lot of them you'll find actually are quite the same when it comes to their business and online processes, and maybe just picking those tiny bits that really need to be unique and what is their USP is maybe worth focusing on.
Great stuff. We shall push on. We still do have quite a few questions and time is running short. This is the question I think that a lot of people want to ask. I certainly did. Were there increased costs given this was delivered in such a short period compared to the cost of a standard turnaround?
Now, I know no one is going to believe me when I say this, but the answer is genuinely no. We came in on budget to a number that I shook hands on in June.
Excellent.
I suppose to add on to that, I think that actually maybe dovetails a little bit into the question asked earlier was, you know, do we have multiple sprint teams? And from our perspective, we were able to provide a quotation that was, as I said, through a shaking of the hand that said, if you trust us and we are a single partner, and I think we did become a trusted advisor very quickly in that engagement. It meant that, yeah, if we can do these things at this price, it will take this amount of time, and that's exactly what came out. And again, it wasn't about throwing loads of bodies and loads of people at it. It was using experts who have done this many times before and using a methodology that's been proven that allowed us to be able to predict and de-risk this particular project.
Okay, great. I shall amalgamate these next two questions because they're sort of similar. How did you work with UX teams, and how did you manage to sort of do user testing on your MVP in such a quick and short time frame?
So we work closely with the BHS, you've got a user experience person, and I suppose based on going back to Tony's point earlier, we didn't have much of a choice to be able to spend lots and lots of time on this. What we were able to do is come up with kind of a clean and fresh design that we're able to put through a number of scenarios and user testing that we felt was the appropriate approach and design for the new site without moving away too far from the HYBRIS out of the box. I think from our perspective in working on this many times before, you know, and I think the industry is moving this way as well. There's only so much you can actually predict in terms of what the customer is going to like and engage with on your e-commerce platform. What you should be doing is continually testing, doing conversion rate optimization, and your customers will tell you what they think. All you need to do is listen to them and look at the analytics.
So I think there's one thing I should also just remind everyone of as well, in the interest of being honest. We were in that very unique position where we weren't trading an existing site because the old sites had closed. So we had our merchandising team and our business team in situ, but we didn't have a business. So that's when I refer to, we were a bit like a startup. So we were very focused on making sure that all the work we were doing with our partners, we were supporting that work through UAT. So to me, that equates to having been able to take out a team from a current active business and making it a project team. So seconding them out to the project. So this was as if we'd taken people out of their real day-to-day job and they were just working on this every day. Now, there's only a small number, but at least they were 100% focused. And then we complemented that with some external resource to help us do the UAT, so we could get through a very large number of use cases and scenarios, so that we could pressure test it more than we would have done had we just relied on our few people internally.
Great stuff. Penultimate question. Where are you up to with regards to producing personalized content and campaigns?
I suppose I can't really comment on that at the moment, other than saying that the capability is there, but ultimately, you know, I'd be giving away a few of the trade secrets when it comes to really divulging what the kind of immediate and next step plans are. It just suffice to say that the platform has the capability and is enabled to be able to provide those features and functionality. It just becomes an execution matter for the business.
Great stuff. And last, but by no means least, this wraps it up quite nicely, really. Now that you're up and running, would you look to move some of your outsourcing in-house? If so, what would you look to move in-house?
It was never the intent of BHS when we set up this new business to pull all this back in-house. It was architected and structured from the very beginning that we would be a very lean business, and we would rely on as a service wherever we could. And that as a service concept extends to customer service, our warehouse, our logistics, as well as our technology partner. Although as it's known, I'm no longer at BHS. I don't think that strategy has changed, and that's what will make them, you know, as agile as they can be going forward, really.
Excellent stuff. Right. Anything else to add, chaps? That's the last question. We've run over the hour, but I think there's been some really interesting things there. So if no one's got anything else to add, thank you very much for taking part in doing this, Kevin, Tony, and Paul. Some really interesting things there. I think we had some really good questions as well, which helped sort of give us an even deeper understanding. And again, thank you to the panelists, and thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.